Chapter 10. Nobody saw the helicopter land because no bus tours or school classes were visiting the Blackvine Swamp that morning. Drake McBride stepped from the chopper and hurried towards the truck that had the Red Diamond logo painted on its doors. Jimmy Lee Bayless emerged from the driver's side and greeted his boss with a grim nod. "What in creation happened out here?" Drake McBride asked. "Pretty much what I told you on the phone." "Is that him?" Drake McBride jerked his chin towards the figure huddled in the truck. "Yes, sir," said Jimmy Lee Bayless. He opened the passenger door and his unhappy-looking man got out. It was impossible not to notice that he was stark naked under the makeshift robe of clear bubble wrap and the same sort of material used to pack valuables for shipping. "What the heck?" Drake McBride exclaimed. "It was all I had in my truck," Jimmy Lee Bayless said. "That's why I asked you to bring some extra clothes." Drake McBride shrugged. "Well, I forgot." Addressing the bubble wrap man, he said, "What's your name, son?" "Melton." "How long you been with us?" "How long? 3 weeks is all," Melton said. "So you're not on full benefits yet," Drake McBride said. "Don't you worry, we'll make sure your doctor bills are covered at least 60%. Did they hurt you?" "Not really, but some bull ants chewed on my bottom with some pretty fierce." Jimmy Lee Bayless said, "Go on and tell Mr. McBride what happened. He's a busy man." Melton didn't seem especially impressed that he was speaking to the president of the company. He looked like he had wished he never heard of Red Diamond Energy Corporation. "I was out here stacking some pipe," he said, "when they all jumped me from behind. Next thing I know, I'm glued to a cypress tree and I can't pull free." "In your birthday suit," Drake McBride said. "Yeah, they stole my clothes." "The pipes, too," said Jimmy Lee Bayless, who already eaten an entire roll of Tums since breakfast. He longed to be back in Texas enjoying the retired life. On his fingers, Drake McBride began ticking off the crimes committed against poor Melton. "So there's assault, grand theft, indecent whatever. How many of them were there, son?" "I don't know." "Well, how many did you see?" "One," Melton said. "But there had to be more. Ain't no way one guy could take me." Jimmy Lee Bayless didn't say so, but he believed it was entirely possible for one physically fit man to have overpowered the scrawny, chain-smoking Melton. Drake McBride pulled Jimmy Lee Bayless aside. "Obviously, we can't tell the police this happened in Section 22, so we're going to call him and tell him it was in Section 21, where it's legal. I want you to make sure this young fella gets his story straight. Lying to the cops is too risky," Jimmy Lee Bayless warned his boss, "especially if we rely on Melton. Kid's got the IQ of a baked potato. He's liable to say anything." Drake McBride let out an aggravated sigh. "We're not supposed to step foot in Section 22, much less be digging a pit and laying pipe. What other choice do we have, Jimmy, but to lie?" "That's easy. Don't call the cops." Jimmy Lee Bayless was trying to conceal his annoyance. From the start, he had been nervous about the scam, even though Drake McBride had promised that it would make both of them rich, beyond their wildest dreams. "Let me handle this," Jimmy Lee Bayless told his boss. "But we got like bandits on the loose," Drake McBride said. "Outlaws, pirates, whatever. You seriously think the cops will come chasing after some pipe thieves way out here in the middle of nowhere? They got bigger fish to fry." "Probably just dope addicts," Drake McBride muttered. "Meatheads. Where are they gonna sell 2 tons of pipe?" They walked back to the truck where Melton was puffing on a cigarette. "I'm sweating to death in this stuff," he complained, and beginning to strip off the bubble wrap. "Whoa there," Drake McBride made a time out sign with his hands. "No offense, son, but I'm not in the mood to deal with the man. Keep your plastic jammies on." Jimmy Lee Bayless told Melton he would take him to the Walmart on the way into town. "I'll buy you some new clothes and a hot lunch." "Thanks, man. What about overtime?" Jimmy Lee Bayless looked at Drake McBride, who made a sour face. "Hey, I spent all night out here," Melton said. "Them red ants been taking chunks off my hide." "Are you saying I wasn't on the company clock?" He held up his arm so that the president of Red Diamond could see the gummy red abrasions left by the hardened glue, which Jimmy Lee Bayless had pried with a screwdriver from the bark of the tree. "I think you'll live," Drake McBride remarked. Jimmy Lee Bayless said, "Tell us more, man, about the man who attacked you." Melton admitted that he hadn't got a clear look at the guy. He had a ski cap pulled down over his eyes, so I couldn't really see his face that great. "Was he young or old?" "I couldn't say," Melton said, "but he was real strong and real crazy." Drake McBride frowned. "Dope, I bet. What'd I tell you?" "No, man, he wasn't high or anything. He was just whacked out. Real mean," Melton said. When he pasted me to the tree, he said I was bear bait. That's what he called me. Real nice, huh? Jimmy Lee Bayless asked. Did he have a weapon? I don't know, probably. Meaning the answer was no, thought Jimmy Lee Bayless. Melton was too embarrassed to admit he'd been captured by a lost of a load expensive pipes to an unarmed intruder. Listen to me, son, Drake McBride said. We're not going to call the cops, okay? Red Diamond will deal with the situation, I promise. We'll catch the creep and we'll make sure he doesn't do it to anybody else. Melton said, sooner the better. Meantime, you got to promise to zip your lip, okay? You can't tell anyone what happened out here, not even your wife or kids. All I got's a girlfriend. Not her either, Jimmy Bayless said. Don't mention this to a living soul, you understand? Gotcha. Melton was idly popping the bubbles in his see-through plastic coat. Hey, when we go by the Walmart, can you buy me some cigarettes? That wacko took my last pack when he swiped my pants. Sure, said Jimmy Lee Bayless. One more thing. I ain't never been up in a helicopter before. Drake McBride's expression turned stony. Sorry, partner. Just a quick spin? Aw, come on. You can't get on a chopper if you're not wearing clothes. Strict FAA rules. What? You're kidding me, Melton said. Yeah, tough break. When the president of Red Diamond Energy Corporation turned on One Boot Hill, he signaled for his pilot to fire up the engines. Dwayne Scrooge Sr. was attacking a 21 sirloin steak, cooked rare. Dwayne Scrooge Jr. contemplated a large steaming plate of linguine. Millicent Winship picked up a fresh shrimp cocktail. At her age, she had no patience for chit-chat. DJ, how are your grades at Truman this term? She asked her grandson. Not so great, he said, but I aim to do better. Do you have any homework tonight? No school tomorrow. It's a teacher work day. Sounds like a good opportunity to catch up with some of your studies, said Mrs. Winship. Yes, ma'am. I brought all my books home. I must say you look very serious and handsome. Embarrassed, Dwayne Jr. shoveled pasta into his blushing cheeks. Mrs. Winship turned to Dwayne Sr. It's quite a difference. I'm impressed. Don't look at me, Millie. It was all DJ, he said, slurping his coffee. He came back from that camping trip, and I swear it's like a stranger was in the house. He picks up his dirty clothes. He brushes his teeth twice a day. Stays up late doing homework. It's like he turned into a grown-up overnight. Maybe you should take a lesson, Mrs. Winship wore a frosty smile. Aw, lay off, the boy's father said. They were sitting at an outside table overlooking the marina that was filled with yachts and sailboats. The restaurant was called the Silver Dolphin, and the food was excellent, though expensive. Mrs. Winship was paying the tab, as usual, and happy to do it. She couldn't get over the promising change in her grandson. Dwayne Sr. was another matter. He showed absolutely no interest in improving himself or his life. Earlier, Mrs. Winship had caught him stashing packets of oyster crackers in his pockets to take home to his obnoxious pet bird. She said, Tell me, DJ, can you see yourself in college someday? Yes, ma'am, it's possible, Dwayne Jr. replied. I'm so pleased to hear that. Have you given any thought to the subject matter you'd like to study, Mrs. Winship said, on the path to a career? Chewing ideally, Dwayne Sr. interjected. It's too early for all that. Cut the boy some slack, Millie. Environmental science, said Dwayne Scrooge Jr. Really? His grandmother beamed and looked cuttingly at Dwayne Sr., whose jaw hung open. I really like the outdoors. It's quiet and pretty, Dwayne Jr. said. Plus, I'm into animals and fishing and stuff. Ever since you were little, you were an explorer and fearless too, Mrs. Winship said fondly. Dwayne Sr. began jabbing at his molars with a toothpick, trying to liberate a string of meat. I'm sorry, but I just don't see Junior as a scientist. Heck, he's flunking biology for the second or third time. Second, Dwayne Jr. said crossly. Mrs. Winship glowered at Dwayne Scrooge Sr. You listen to me and you listen well. This boy can be whatever he chooses to be once he finds the right role model. Ouch, Dwayne Sr. said, responding to the not to the insult, but to the rather small hole he had punctured in his gums. Dwayne Jr. put down his fork. If they wipe out the Everglades and all, people like me won't have anywhere to go for these except for the big cities, and I hate big cities. Mrs. Winship thoughtfully appraised her grandson. Tell me about your camping trip, she said. He cleared his throat. I caught some bass, caught some otter with some pups, and then a jillion gators as usual. He started eating again. Were you out there all alone? Pretty much, Dwayne Jr. didn't look up from his plate. Your dad told me about the fire. The headmaster called me as well. What fire? Out at the swamp, Dwayne Sr. cut in. Now don't act like you've never heard about it. The boy spun some linguine on his fork. Oh yeah, that fire. Mrs. Winship dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and then she refolded neatly on her lap. DJ, I'm 77 years old, she said, which doesn't make me a dinosaur, but I'm not so young anymore either. Time is something I can't afford to waste. Do you understand me? Yes, ma'am. So just tell me if you set that fire, yes or no. No, ma'am. Yet the police think you did it? Why is that? Again, Dwayne Sr. spoke up. They can't prove a thing. Otherwise, the boy would be locked up in juvie hall right now. Mrs. Winship shot Dwayne Sr. a peeved look. Gently, she asked her grandson, do you have a chance to give your story to the authorities? Yes, ma'am. I straight up told him I didn't do it, Dwayne Jr. said. Those days are over, right? Yes, ma'am. No more fires. It's not something that a future environmental scientist would do, burn in a swamp. No, ma'am, his grandmother said. There was a field trip from the Truman out there that morning. Somebody could have been badly hurt, DJ, or even killed. Dwayne Jr. looked her straight in the eye. It wasn't me, Graham, I swear. All right, I believe you. Thank goodness that's settled, said Dwayne Jr., scanning the restaurant impatiently. Where did our waiter disappear to? I can't wait to have a peek at that dessert tray. It was only her love for Dwayne Jr. that prevented Mrs. Winship from smacking his father on the top of the head, hopelessly. To the boy, she said, your mother told me she wrote you. He seemed surprised. I didn't get a letter. Nothing. Nope. Me neither, Dwayne Sr. piped. Mrs. Winship was ashamed to think that her daughter could be so selfish and neglectful. I'm sorry, DJ. I'll speak with her. It's not your fault, Graham. How about some dessert? No, thanks. Well, I saved plenty of room, Dwayne Sr. announced heartedly, patting his stomach. Melissa Winship eyed him as if he were a cockroach on a wedding cake. We've all had enough, she said sharply, and called for the check. Before Marta's mother dropped them off at the mall, she asked, what's the name of the movie? Marta faked a cough and turned to Nick, who got a hint. Spider-Man the 7, he said to Mrs. Gonzalez, Revenge of the Web Slinger. He had no idea if that was even a film. He just lost count of all the Spider-Man sequels. PG? Yeah, Mom, it's PG, Marta said. I'll see you back here at 10:30 sharp, then don't be late. Bye, Mom, Marta said impatiently. Have you got enough money? Goodbye, Mom. Lying about the movie made Nick and Marta feel sneaky and low, but there seemed to be no other choice. Their parents would never let them go out and spy on Mrs. Starch's house, especially after dark. According to MapQuest, it was only 2.4 miles, Nick said, studying the map what he had printed out. He got Mrs. Starch addresses from Libby, who had found it in the faculty director in her father's den after the detective had visited Dr. Dressler's office. Marta said, I can't believe I forgot a flashlight. Nick had brought one in his pocket of his jacket. Let's go, he said, and he headed off across the vast parking lot towards the road. Before long, the bright lights of the mall were behind them. Sticking closely to the road MapQuest directions, they walked 5 blocks to Mockingbird Court and 7 more blocks to Grackle Drive. When they reached Mrs. Starch's street, Nick said, we got to go west until the road ends. Marta laughed. No way! The old buzzard actually lives on Buzzard Boulevard? How perfect of that! Number 777, Nick said, the very last house. Naturally. The streetlights ended when the pavement ran out, and Nick and Marta continued down the dirt road. The night deepened, and Nick took out a flashlight. Doesn't anybody besides her live out here? Marta said nervously. They walked past a couple of houses that were under construction and another one roofless and abandoned, probably a hurricane casualty. The woods hummed with crickets and cascades, cicadas, and rustled with other heavier sounds that might have been rabbits or raccoons. Whenever Nick heard something, he aimed the light into the woods to see what it was, but the critters always stopped moving and remaining invisible among the pines and the shrub. Nick assured Marta there was nothing to be afraid of, but that he was jumpy too. Usually he loved hiking through the outdoors, but it was a totally different experience in the black of the night. Do me a favor, Marta said. Take off the ace bandage. Why? Because you're going to need both arms to carry me back to the mall if I pass out. You're not going to pass out. No, I'll probably just drop dead of fright when a rabid bear comes out chasing after us. Or a panther, Nick joked, trying to lighten the mood. Shut up. Every now and then there would be a glance back, watching one oncoming headlight, but Buzzard Boulevard was quiet as a graveyard. Nick wondered if he was able to run fast or normal with one arm bound clumsily behind him. How much further, Marta said. Nick didn't know. The distance seemed longer than it had appeared on the map. He picked up the pace and the white beam of the flashlight bobbing ahead of them. A layer of clouds hung overhead, blocking out the stars and the moon. When the small animal scampered across the road ahead of them, Marta let out a yip and grabbed Nick. This was a really terrible idea, she said. Shh, we're here. The flashlight illuminated a pale metal mailbox with 3 sevens on the side with no name. Where's the house, Marta said. This way, Nick led her along an overgrown trail no wider than a car. He nearly stepped on a coach whip snake that fortunately slithered in the shadows before Marta noticed it. At the end of the trail, he dropped into a crouch. Marta knelt behind him. Mrs. Starch's house stood alone in the middle of a clearing. Nick counted 3 stories, although the wooden structure appeared smaller than that, hunched and frail. A bar bulb flickered from the ceiling of the porch, but no light shone from the windows. In the yard, there was no sign of a blue Prius. Nobody's home, Marta said, clicking her teeth nervously. We'll see. Where are you going? To spy, Nick said. That was the plan, right? Marta stayed close, and then they darted around the house to the back porch, which was unlit. After creeping around the steps, they searched fruitfully for the window in which to peek. All the shades were drawn. Oh, well, we tried, Marta said, turning to leave. Get back here. Come on, Nick, I'm totally creeped. Something's not right. Thank you. Now can we please go? What I mean is, look at this place. She hasn't been here for a while. Nick shined the flashlight back and forth, checking for spiders. Marta cringed, but she got the point. Mrs. Starch is a notorious neat freak, yet her porch looked untouched from a broom or a mop. Shimmering spiderwebs hung like tapestries in the corners of the ceiling, while the floor was littered with pine needles and moth casings and lizard poop. Nick said, she hasn't been home since the field trip. I'll bet you $20. Then who's picking up her mail and driving her car, Marta said. Exactly, that's the mystery. Smoke knows everything. He's next on our list. Meantime, Marta ducked and covered her head. A bat just buzzed over me, I swear to gosh. Don't be such a wuss, Nick jiggled the knob of the back door, which was locked. We should go in. It's a long walk back. Or we should go. It's a long walk back, Marta said, apprehensively eyeing the sky. Nick scanned the porch until he spotted a large clay pot and contained a wilted palm. Give me your hand, he said, pocketing the flashlight. We're going to lift that thing. Now you're officially insane. Hurry up on the count of 3. The pot budged only a few inches, but that was enough. Nick pointed to a dusty circle on the wood planks, and there lay a key. He smiled. Way to go, Sherlock, Marta said. The key was fit into the door, and the lock turned with a crisp click. You comin'? Nick asked. Or would you rather stay out here with the bats and the black widows? End of chapter 10.